Hey guys, what's going on? Just wanted to do a video that I promised you guys on all of Seachem's products. I've got Carl here who just actually came out to see me, and he's going to step through all the stuff here on the table and just really kind of go over what they offer for all of you that have planted tanks and are just curious what the different things are that they provide. Some of the new stuff he's going to go over for me because I'm as clueless as anybody about it, and now I'm just going to turn it over to Carl and let him tell us how all this stuff works.
Alright, so we have our basic line in plant products. This stuff's been out for ages. Basically, if you're just starting out a tank, you basically need to start with a good substrate, like our fluorite. Different types of fluorite we have: brown, black, red, anything probably that you would want. The gravel's basically for the root system, pulling up nourishment for the roots. And then you have your products that you add right to the water. And our Flourish line includes Flourish, Flourish Excel, and Flourish Iron. Those are the beginners beginning product for the novice plant guy. It's basically Flourish, which is your food source for the plants. You have Flourish Excel, which is your carbon source, especially if you're not using CO2. A lot of people can't afford to get CO2 right off the bat, so they use Flourish Excel.
Right, great product. I use that one.
It's probably, if you have no money whatsoever, Flourish Excel would probably get plants, along with the substrate, would get plants growing pretty great for you.
Yeah.
Especially when you have fish in the tank, because Flourish, you can basically use fish waste as a food source for the plants and anything else that's in that tank. Plants take up a lot of different sources for their food. Flourish Iron, great for red stem plants.
Yeah.
Ludwiga, different types like that.
Yeah, the tiger lilies do really well with that as well. They really boom with that.
The key with this product, the Flourish Iron, this iron is almost like in an organic state, in a ferrous form. Plants can only take up iron in a ferrous form. If most plant products out of the market are taken from land-based plants, they're in a ferric form. And it's harder in an aquarium for plants to break down and change that to the ferrous form to take in for food. So this is already based on a ferrous iron. And it's used up very quickly by the leaves of the plant. So when people do an iron test in their tank and using another product, they can basically register iron in it, because the only thing that plant can take in with that iron product is the roots, is what takes in the iron until it could break down break it down into a ferrous form. But with this product, within 30 minutes, you better do a test, because the leaves try to suck it in very quickly. So it's a great way to introduce iron into the tank.
Sure.
Plants take it up very quickly.
I've noticed my plants will get a lot redder the very next day. I mean, it's really quick results on the iron.
Really, yes, because and if people get upset with us because they call us and say, "I'm doing an iron test reading, and we can't get any iron reading on it. We're adding all kinds of iron to the tank." That's because the iron is ready for the plant to take it up, leaves and all.
It's
which
absorbed.
Is a great way to do it.
Right. Well, I get great results when I use that. Especially the tiger lily, the lotus lily, just has great color after that, like the very next day.
Well, you'll find in not only this line, but the Aqua Vitro plant line, and all of our products, even on the reef side, Seachem doesn't just fill bottles from big containers and put it out on the market. a lot of their products are basically a blend. And our goal is to not have the animal, whether it be plant, coral, fish, use energy to take in our products.
Okay.
The less energy they have to use to take in, the more healthy that plant or animal is going to be, because they don't have to expend the energy to get their food.
Sure.
So we try our best to do stuff like that. And that's why this iron, being a glutamate, is basically ready to take in.
Okay.
We also have, for more experienced plant people, are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Now, you, as a plant guy, potassium,
I use that a
great
lot.
product. Make your plants more full.
Yeah, well, potassium, what you'll see is on like the swords or some of the plants, you'll see decay. You'll see it starts to get a little veiny. You see the veins, and then like the green material is starting to just it looks a little sick on the edges, or the tips will get bad.
Right.
And so that usually is a sign to me that it needs potassium. I'll add potassium in, and then that problem just goes away.
And it supposedly, what a lot of people use potassium for is get a thicker plant.
Sure.
Also,
more green and more
green.
Yeah.
When you get to the other two, in phosphorus and nitrogen, phosphorus more on a like yellowing of older leaves, as well as nitrogen. Both of them work well together. Both in a ready form for the plant to use. The nitrogen, basically nitrate source, phosphorus, like I said, used more for specific plants that tend to yellow.
So the nitrogen or the phosphorus, or which one would you?
They're both made to work together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The nitrogen is a form of nitrate for the plant to take in.
Okay.
The phosphorus, I'm trying to think of the word.
So really, if I had a plant, let's say I had a really tall plant and it was starting to thin out in the bottom, which is really common, especially in a low-tech plant where you're not injecting CO2, you'll find that the lower areas of the plant are getting starved out of light.
Okay.
And they tend to yellow or not do as well. Is that probably a case where you would consider using this to try to make the plant look healthy all the way through? Or
both two different types of food sources for those types of yellowing.
Okay.
One basically an ammonia type source for plants in a form of ammonium in the Flourish nitrogen, and phosphorus, another food source for the plant. So any plants that are yellowing, you can go to that line.
Sure.
So those two products. For the growth of the plant, more on the other three products.
Right.
And fullness and the potassium.
Like the baby tier that I have in the shrimp tank, near the bottom, it's really starting to thin out and lose good color. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a good candidate. Yeah, a good candidate to get that to be healthy all the way through. And
and I like to test and see.
Sure.
When you do basic type plants that don't need a ton of care, it seems like everything pretty much stays green.
Sure. Yeah.
With Excel and Iron and Flourish.
That's true. That's true.
When you start to get into more professional look type tanks like yours and some others that I've seen, that's when they start to use the phosphorus and nitrogen products.
Yeah, and I've noticed on some of the aquascape contests where they'll have the tanks, one of the things they'll always ding them on, even though the tank looks amazing, is the health of the plant. Because during those contests, if you watch a mono or some of those guys, they'll talk about, the scape was good, but some of the health of the plant was not. And it's amazing.
Exactly.
But they're running CO2, but there's still things that, CO2 doesn't necessarily make it. It doesn't make it green.
Right.
And I always wondered about that, and you kind of hit on that here. So
yeah, because you could have plants that are growing like crazy with that stuff.
Sure.
But like you said, the yellowing from underneath, the yellowing of older leaves, that type of thing. is where those products come
that's awesome.
into play.
And these Flourish Tabs, I've actually used these. I found these to be great.
Flourish Tabs I have to use in a situation like mine where I don't have I'm using a regular gravel on the bottom. Perfect for people who are using regular gravel.
Right.
Now the fluorite, what you can do, if you already have a tank that has regular gravel in it, you can basically add fluorite to that tank, mix it up on the bottom, and then slowly that'll go work its way through the regular gravel. So you don't have to rip your whole tank apart.
Sure.
But in that case, Flourish Tabs comes into play, and the roots basically are taking all that food up.
Okay. That's awesome. So now you just want to focus on the new line and help.
Right, and the go into the new line. Okay.
So, and just for the viewers, because this was the thing that always confused me, Carl, is this, because this is kind of how we had that talk. That Flourish Excel is one of my favorite. I thought it was really good, and I was trying to understand how that related to the new line, and you were just, and one of the things you said that was amazing, it's like, we didn't improve on that because there was nothing to improve.
Right. In the Aqua Vitro line, on the plant side, we don't have a carbon source because there was nothing to improve on.
Okay.
So if you do this line, which is made to work well with CO2, that's what these products were developed for.
So this is really for the high-tech guy who's doing injected CO2, and this is stuff that...
Who wants to get to that next level. They already know what they're doing.
Sure.
They get more and more expensive type plants.
Yeah.
Aqua Vitro offers a more concentrated plant line than our regular line. That would be for novice to experienced, and then you can basically switch over to this line. And each of the products, again, is there's a food source. Premier, which is basically a dechlorinator, removes chloramines and chlorine, ammonia. What it does is...
And how is that different than Prime?
Well, this was made specifically...
I use that every day.
Right. This was made specifically for plants, for a planted tank. Because it converts ammonia into a form that the plants can take up as food. Where you wouldn't use that in a saltwater situation because you don't want the ammonia in that tank.
Sure.
But in a planted tank, because it uses a base of a thiosulfate base, it'll convert it to the chloramines into ammonium form, and that the plants can take it up as food. So that's what makes it different, where the Prime doesn't do that.
So it's basically Prime for plants.
Yeah, exactly.
And which is what it says on the label, which, I'm just reading that.
And there's not a product like that out there. Most of them are like a concentrated chloramine remover, a chlorine remover. Like Prime has been around forever. It just seems to remove everything bad from the water. Then you have a more concentrated food source for plants in Envy. Basically carbohydrates, vitamins, amino acids, that type of thing, so that plants can take up very easily. And this, as well as our Aqua Vitro reef line, this contains chlorella, which is a higher algae form, very high in protein. A lot of nutrients in there that the plants can take up.
Is there any fear with like algae blooms if you do that, or something to be aware of, or just do that in moderation? Or
you don't want to go crazy with
it.
Yeah, as you see what the uptake of the plant is. If you start to see a little algae, pull back a little bit. It's a great jump start, especially in tanks where you have a 110, a 90, where you have 2 discus in it, and that's it. So those plants are going to need another source of food.
Right.
And as we said, in a tank that's loaded with fish, there's so much waste that plants can take that up as their food source on more of a natural basis.
And ironically, that's why a lot of people thought I overstocked the 120, and I was putting a ton of fish in there to try to help feed the plants. Right. And then when the plants got booming and the fish did well, the danger is when I pruned and took out a lot of the plant load, it kind of threw things out of balance. So I had to do more water changes, but yeah, it's amazing how that works, how they feed off of each other. That's a good point.
The iron called Propel is the same type of iron in the Flourish Iron.
Okay.
Same concentration in a time-released iron form. So where the Flourish Iron is readily available, this is in a ferrous form that is time-released. Okay. So ongoing, the plants can take it in as needed.
So, and that one would show up in tests. If you're testing your water, you would see that version. Right. Okay. So it's a slow release. Okay.
There's both in there. Okay. I should clarify that. Sure. There's both forms. There's the Flourish Iron readily available form that take in and time-released iron. Okay. That's what gives you that little extra bump in this line rather than the Flourish line.
That's awesome.
Then we have your nitrogen source which is called synthesis. Right. The same type of process going on. It's taken nitrate, ammonium, and urea, and basically supplying that as a food source for the plants. So if you very concentrated.
Sure. So if you didn't have any fish at all in your tank and you're just trying to feed the plants, it would be a great. Right. Okay.
The nitrogen source in there. The nitrogen source in there comes in 3 different types of nitrogen available for plants, where some other nitrogen products would just have one source. Okay. Activate is your phosphate source, your phosphorus source. Sure. And again,
which is like this one,
right? Okay. Where this is 4,500 milligrams of phosphorus. This one is 6,000. So just a more concentrated type. Okay. And
does that mean? Well, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but something I've heard somebody in the store say once is that this line is more expensive than the other line, but you don't have to use as much of the material because it's a higher grade and a higher concentrate, so it should last longer for the dollar, theoretically.
Right.
Is that
right? That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
And these type of products, because they're so concentrated, you can quickly pinpoint levels that you want to increase. Okay. You may get a plant from somewhere that they say, oh, this really enjoys the addition of phosphorus. Okay. Okay, well, that being so concentrated, you can basically get those levels up very quickly, being that way. It provides that source without enhancing any type of algae growth. Okay. So that's very key too, because a lot of these products on the market for plants, you have to watch using them because you overdo it, and you're gonna start seeing that heavy algae growth. And I've seen that a lot because a lot of times when people go into stores, they're only putting in, setting up a new tank, they'll put 10 plants in a 20-gallon tank and start adding all these plant foods and supplements. Sure. Algae growth like crazy because the plants can only take up so much. Right. And again, this line is basically made so the plants can take up those things more easily and more quickly. Okay. Mineralize is your general hardness. We were talking about that in your tank, bringing the general hardness up in a tank.
But that'll impact the pH a little, won't it?
Right. It basically.
And that's the challenge. Just for people watching, if you're messing with your GH or KH, chances are it will push your pH up, if I'm not mistaken. Or it can.
It can.
They're kind of in a triangle, and I don't really know how that works. I just know they're kind of related, and I've even seen studies that show that even pumping air into your tank will actually raise the pH, believe it or not, which is why a lot
CO2 is going to lower pH.
Well, it will, but normal air, if you just pump in normal air, it raises the pH, which is why a lot of the European people, especially like the people that do what they call the Dutch style tank and those kind of tanks, they never aerate for that reason. They'll have they have the surface tension and they try to move the water, but they don't ever try to introduce bubbles to the tank because they said it impacts the pH.
Well, I guess that comes into play when that light source hits and the plants start giving off oxygen and taking in the CO2. Your oxygen is going to start raising the pH in the tank.
Sure.
And that happens on a reef tank as well, where you'll have a lower pH when the lights are off. And as that day goes on and the lights are on, your pH will start to rise.
Right. Well, you definitely see in a high-tech CO2 tank, they call that purling, and that's very noticeable. You'll see, the lights kick on for a while, the oxygen's building up, and then all of a sudden the tanks will, the carbon's building up, and the tanks will emit tiny bubbles of oxygen.
Right.
You can see it in the water, which is really, really cool. And I've got what they call false purling. I've gotten that on occasion. I usually get it in the winter where I do a large water change, and the plants are really healthy and there's light, and then things will start bubbling.
Oh, okay.
But they call that a false purling. But anyway. But so the GH and the KH are also, like, if your plants, I guess, are not as healthy. I know a lot of plants want the water to be harder because it has more mineral content, or is that a wrong way to look at that? Or?
I guess it depends on what, like cryptocorns like soft water.
Okay.
So you adjust it that way. It depends on what you're keeping, I guess.
Sure.
Sagittaria likes hard water. That, it just depends on what you're keeping.
Okay.
Where you want to adjust your GH.
Right.
That be a product to do that.
I really see a lot of people that have to deal with this in other areas of the country. I've got a friend that I correspond with that's up in Minnesota, and his water is much harder.
Oh, so you bring it down.
Well, and he's having to do reverse osmosis to bring it down, and then he's having to do some other stuff to bring the GH or the KH. Fortunately, where we are, we get water coming out of the Blue Ridge Mountain or the mountains. That's the Appalachian Mountain. Well, anyway, where we are in North Carolina, the water's very, very conducive to the Amazon-based tetra low pH type plants that do very well. So.
Even the
salt water.
The tap water is even higher concentrations of phosphates.
Okay.
Which, great for plant tanks. They
can
take all that up if you're going to load it up with plants.
Yeah. No, and that's why I like to do large water changes weekly. I really think it helps the plants promote growth.
You do weekly water changes?
Yeah, I do about 60% in the 120. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's why it looks so nice.
Well, thanks. So does that pretty much wrap it all up? Is there anything else you want to tell people?
Well, carbonates your KH.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So that's the last of that Aquavitra line. This is what raises your KH.
Okay.
And basically that's going to keep your pH more stable where you're trying to keep it.
Sure.
Raising that KH, which is also increases your carbonate as well as your potassium levels, this product will do.
Okay.
So it's another source of potassium for the plant.
Okay.
So it just depends on what you want to keep your pH at. If you're keeping discus, you want to keep it lower. You'd keep your KH up and you have less pH swings when you're, one, doing water changes, two, if your pH is tending to try to rise like your friend.
Okay.
Higher KH will keep that pH more stable when adding a product like acid buffer,
sure,
or alkaline buffer to go the other way.
Right.
And just remember, that's another point. When you're doing a tank, depending on where, like if you're keeping rainbows, you want to keep the pH a little higher. Keep your viscous, you want to keep the pH a little lower. Both our products, acid buffer and alkaline buffer, are phosphate free. Okay. So in turn, if you're doing those tanks that do not have a lot of plants and it take up that extra phosphate, the phosphates tend to increase your algae growth. Okay. And algae tends to really bloom when you're using a regular acid buffer, an acid regulator and an alkaline regulator. Okay. Let's see. I guess we could stop and and then if you want to add something, we can just add on.
Yeah. No, I think this is great. Carl, I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you explaining all this to everybody. And is there a website or something that I could redirect people to within Seachem if they're looking for a certain plan? Or
Seachem's website will offer you an app on your phone for dosing. Okay. As well as how much fluorite you would need in a tank. There's an app for that. Okay. So awesome. It's all in one app dosing. Mainly for the Apple systems. Okay.
There's not an Android version yet?
They're working on it.
Okay. Okay, awesome.
And that will get you exactly what you need in your dosing. Okay. Measure where you're at, and then it'll tell you how much you need, as well as the depth of fluorite you want in the tank.
Okay, that's awesome.
And always, Seachem has on their website additional information about each of the Aquavitro products and your Flourish line. Okay. Now the Aquavitro line is only sold at independent stores, so that's one big thing about that. It's not sold. Generally, not supposed to be sold online. Really? I didn't for the independent dealer. You won't find it in mass or big box. Okay. Where you would in the Flourish line. Sure. So if any of your guys want to get that, they'd have to find it. They'd have to get it in a store. Okay. So just something. Do you guys have a dealer site where if they want to find the dealer nearest them, they can? Yeah, any site that when you go to the Seachem site and you go to find a store or store locator. Sure. Each store has exactly what they carry of Seachem on the site. So I could look on your site and find exactly. And I'll put a link on this video for people to go do that and for them to find the ad. For their nearby store that carries that product, it'll go within say 50 miles a radius. That's awesome. Of a store near them that carries that certain product. And do you guys carry this outside the USA, or is it just outside the USA? It's in many countries all over the world. Awesome. We're pretty worldwide now. Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I'll be glad to go over any more products. Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll post this up because I've been promising everybody that I would, and then you guys out there, if you have any questions or anything else that you want us to cover that's a Seachem product, happy to either get the information for you from Carl and post it up on the description for this video, or maybe do a new video if this one goes well. But you guys, hey, thanks for watching. Have a great Monday, and you guys take care. See you.